The Washington Wizards select Anise Dybantsa Jr. from Brigham Young University.
A.K.A. A.J. Dybantsa from BYU. That was the commissioner last night announcing the number one pick in the draft. I think that when we got to the commissioner taking the stage, I didn't feel like there was much drama. Now, I was not, buried into social media like many are. And so if there was a report about Dybantsa prior to the actual pick, I didn't want to see it. I wanted to be, somewhat surprised, but I really didn't feel like there was going to be a surprise. The surprise would have been obviously Darren Peterson at this point. Most people, the significant majority, were mocking A.J. Dybantsa to Washington, but because they were so tight-lipped leading up to this, there wasn't a lot of information about what they were going to do. And the pick was A.J. Dybantsa, as it was mocked. I was expecting to hear that, and that's what we got last night. A.J. Dybantsa, the third number one overall pick of this franchise in this century alone. Kwame Brown back in 2001, John Wall in 2010, and now A.J. Dybantsa in 2026. I was really pleased, I have to say, and excited about the excitement among Wizards fans, not just at the anthem last night on the wharf, but I think in terms of my circle of friends who are still Wizards fans, lots of optimism, lots of excitement. It's very reminiscent of, if you had a pick at number one overall that everybody agreed was going to be the next transcendent star. And I'm glad that that optimism exists. I'm actually optimistic about A.J. Dybantsa. But I'm going to tell you right now, not to be a joy kill, not to be, a thief stealer, a joy thief stealer. I just play the odds here. I went through the number one picks this century. 14 hits, 12 major misses. You go back through just top 10s in drafts, and it's a coin flip on wherever you draft in the top 10. This is similar, very similar to the NFL draft with one exception. There are fewer opportunities, smaller roster sizes, fewer players turning over. There just aren't that many opportunities for rookies to come in. Now, we obviously know that these players, some of them are going to be the future stars of the NBA. Not every draft is guaranteed to have that, obviously. And the point really is you just don't know where it's going to come from. Giannis at 16 or 15, Kawhi Leonard at 12, Jokic in the second round, Jalen Brunson in the second round. In terms of the best players in recent years on championship teams. You just don't know. I think these drafts have gotten to the point where, man, there is a lot of excitement. There's big business around these drafts, no doubt about it. But the reality is it's a crapshoot, no matter where you're picking. With that said, you know how I feel if you've been listening this week. I actually liked Darren Peterson as a upside, high-ceiling player. Basketball conversation only, not all the other stuff, more than any other player in the draft. I liked Caleb Wilson next in terms of high ceiling, and I think that's what you have to draft when you're drafting number one overall. But lots of due diligence. I don't have all that information. I don't have what teams found out about Peterson or what the Wizards found out about Peterson. But I do like, and many of you have mistaken my Peterson conclusion this week with, he doesn't like Dybantsa. No, I do like Dybantsa. I think this draft has a lot of promise in terms of producing more contributing NBA starters, if not all-star players, than recent drafts. I think that, there were 7, 8, 9, 10 players that were very intriguing in terms of pro prospects, and I don't think we get that every year. I thought this show Where did you watch, Max? ABC or ESPN?
I was watching on ABC.
I was watching on ESPN, primarily because Legler was on ESPN, and I think Legler's phenomenal. And I think he just does such a great job of in analyzing this stuff. And I actually thought their coverage was great. I flipped around a little bit, but it's funny how many people, including guys like Jay Williams or Jay Billis and others, you heard over and over again, Darren Peterson is the best prospect in this draft. Over and over again, I heard that last night. Over and over again, there was agreement, and from talking to NBA people, that in terms of the highest ceiling prospect in the draft, it's Darren Peterson. But when you're drafting and you're investing like you have to invest, you got to be sure that you're getting somebody that is all there and is, able to explain away what he had to explain from this one season. So I do think that there was a bit of, we can't blow this. We have to get, along with high ceiling, some high floor here. And I think that's what they got with Dybantsa. I do think Dybantsa has a chance to be a big-time scorer, to be an NBA All-Star at some point, to be a critical piece to maybe, a true deep into the postseason type of franchise. But I also know this. Nobody really knows for sure. You just don't know with these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Just like it's really hard even in the NFL draft to know for sure. Now, Will Dawkins, the general manager, said a couple of things last night. He said they were never close to trading out of the first pick. Remember, there was some discussion as to whether or not, if they really wanted Peterson and Utah really wanted Dybantsa, was there a chance to trade one back? He said that they weren't close to trading out. He said, though, that teams definitely called, and he said, we know how valuable number one overall is. We did our due diligence, and we know how special and how different A.J. Dybantsa is. He's a good player. He's an alpha, too. He's a competitor. He didn't want to come out of games. He played in a very rugged league this year. The Big 12 was legit, up there, if not the best league, one of the top two leagues in the country. BYU went 23-12 during the season. They finished kind of in the middle of the pack of the Big 12 at 9-9, but they played a really good non-conference schedule early on. They ended up, by the way, if you didn't know this, with Dybantsa scoring 35 in their one tournament game as a 6 seed. They were a 6 seed in the tournament. They lost to Texas in the first round, 79-71. Texas had played in one of those first 4 games, had come through that, and then they beat Dybantsa and BYU 79-71 in the first round of the tournament. But Dybantsa was phenomenal in that game, had 35. But this was a team that, early on played teams like Villanova and UConn and Wisconsin and Miami and Clemson in the non-conference. They had a big-time non-conference schedule. So he went through the wars in his 1 year. A lot of people said, well, he went to BYU. He passed on, Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, no, BYU in the Big 12 had a schedule, brutal schedule. And he shined all year long. Now, Richie Saunders, a player that was a big part of BYU's team this year, missed some key games and was banged up for others. That probably cost them a chance to maybe go a little bit deeper into the tournament. But loved him as a college player, loved watching him. I'll tell you what, though, in that one matchup against Kansas, when Kansas had a 20-point lead on BYU at Allen Fieldhouse at halftime, with Darren Peterson going for 18 points on 6 of 8 from the floor, 3 of 5 from behind the arc, played basically a perfect half of basketball. Dybantsa was matched up on him occasionally, and Peterson was unstoppable in that game. And then, and this is why he did not go number one overall, and then he tapped out in the second half. said, I can't go. And BYU was making a big comeback in that game. They cut a 20-point lead down to 5, and he just sat on the bench and would not go back into the game, suffering from cramps, which was an issue with him all year long. A.J. Dybantsa is the number 1 pick. Look, I like the fit, too. It's not how I would have drafted. I don't think you draft based on how he fits into your current group, a team that's lost, 196 games in the last 3 seasons. That's not really what you do with number 1. You draft the player that you think has the best chance to be the best player overall, an elite level player. But they believe that about Dybantsa, and he fits. And he fits because you've got Trae Young coming back. He's your starting point guard. Your starting 2 guard is either Keyshawn George or Trey Johnson, more likely than not. Your starting small forward is very likely A.J. Dybantsa. Now, Bilal Coulibaly will have a say, and that Will Riley will have a say, especially early in the season. But, if they are drafting a number 1 player and they want this guy to start playing and to start developing, you plug him in at the 3. Hopefully Anthony Davis, fingers crossed, is healthy and ready to go as your 4. And then Alex Sarr is your center. And, when you pull up a Wizards depth chart on any sports site, what you'll see is a lot of red next to names because there were a lot of players injured, including Alex Sarr, who was injured just a few weeks ago, but will be fine by the time we get to the beginning of the season. But that's your starting 5. Somebody like Bub Carrington is likely the backup point guard. Whether it's Johnson or George at the 2, the other guys coming off the bench and getting significant minutes. Coulibaly's the backup to Dybantsa at the 3. And what they don't have right now really are quality bigs as depth. There was some conversation about would the Wizards trade back into the draft at the end of the first round and try to pick somebody, bigger in the first round. They did not do that. But tonight they have an opportunity with 2 selections at 21 in the second round overall, 51 total in the draft, and at 60 with the last pick. So 2 second-round picks. We'll see what they do with those. There are still some intriguing players on the board. I think for me, the biggest surprise about round 1 is that Isaiah Evans from Duke did not get drafted in the first round. Somebody's going to get themselves a really good player in the second round. I know that there were other surprises, whether it was Lopez at 21 or Philon not going as early as they thought, or maybe a guy like Lendenberg going a little bit maybe earlier to Golden State. I mean, he's 24 years old. Golden State's got to win right now. I mean, that's why they went with, an older player, which obviously is not typical in the draft anymore. Yeah, I mean, look, you look at the whole first round and it's like, who knows? I really liked Peterson. I really liked Wilson, and I really liked Acuff Jr. in terms of potential future elite players. But I also really liked Dybantsa as a player that could develop into an absolute monster, all-star caliber player. They're young. There's a lot of time. Development becomes key. Location, organization, all of that becomes super important. Landing in the right place at the right time often is the difference with many of these very gifted players. But I'm excited. I mean, I would have certainly understood if they had gone Peterson and applauded it. But I also understand why there's risk there, and they can't, risk that you end up getting a guy that turns out to be a total bust because he's got issues health-wise, whether it's medical, physical, or mental. But it's very possible that Utah got the best player in the draft, even though they didn't win the lottery. It's also more than likely that another team got the best player in the draft, and we just don't know who that team is or who that player is. That's the more likely out of the Peterson versus Dybantsa. Very likely somebody else that got picked last night or somebody that will get picked tonight will end up becoming the best player from the 2026 draft. That's just probability based on how this thing has worked through the years. All right. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. AJ Dybantsa last night compared himself when asked about what kind of player, he himself would comp himself to. And here's what he said.
Which NBA player are you most like, but no one compares you to?
Wow, that's a good one. I never got that question before. You want some real ball knowledge?
Give it to me.
He never played in the NBA, but he got drafted. Len Bias.
He compared himself, boys and girls, to one Leonard Bias. I love that he knows who Len Bias is. I do think Len Bias's legend has been so, I don't want to say outsized because I think it matches what he actually was, but it's been so prominent, for basketball people, young, middle-aged, old. It just seems like he's one of those guys where every once in a while, even a young kid will get a highlight on social media, a 60-second highlight reel of Bias and go, "Dad, who was this?" Because it is impressive. So I loved that he compared himself to somebody. I mean, he was asked, about somebody that he never gets compared to, and he compared himself to Len Bias. I don't see that comp at all in watching AJ Dybantsa. And it's not because I don't think Dybantsa is good in his own right. I just don't think they are similar stylistically. Len Bias, size-wise, similar. AJ Dybantsa is a better creator with the basketball. He actually, I think, needs to have the ball in his hands a lot. And I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic with Trae Young. We'll see if he's okay being off the ball. But I think we play in a positionless sport, much more so than it's ever been. And I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for AJ Dybantsa to have the ball in his hands. That was never Bias. Dybantsa could play the 2 as much as he can be the 3 or even a stretch 4. Bias could have never played the 2. He was great at everything except for as a ball handler. He was not a strong ball handler. He was a forward. He wasn't Jordan. He wasn't a 2 guard. He wasn't asked to initiate the offense. He wasn't asked to beat people off the dribble. He caught the ball typically with his head level to the rim on a pass to the upper corner of the backboard, slamming it home. Or he caught it on the block or at the elbow, and that's where he did his work. Bias, much better shooter than Dybantsa has been at this point. Now, I think Dybantsa's got a great stroke, and I think he's going to develop into a really solid shooter, including a three-point shooter. Bias would have been a great three-point shooter as a stretch 4 if they went small, in a lineup in the NBA. They didn't do that back then much. You didn't have stretch 4s. You didn't go small ball as much, but that's what, how he could have fit in to today's game. And Leonard was a good defender who became a great defender and a monster shot blocker at times and could be a very good rebounder. Dybantsa is just much more of a creator with the ball in his hands. It's funny that he used that as a comp. I don't see that comp at all. To me, like watching Dybantsa, there's a little bit of, I don't want to say Kevin Durant like he's going to be Kevin Durant, but there's a little bit of Durant because I think he's going to develop into a very good long-range shooter. And he's tall and long. He's got the big wingspan. He can finish. He can take people off the dribble. He can score in the mid-range like KD can. And I think he will be able to stretch the floor big time. I like, what the Wizards have. In terms of, like, expectations right now, he's going to be a first-year player. I mean, could he be Cooper Flagg as a rookie? He could be, and the opportunity will be there. But I'm not so sure the opportunity will be there if Anthony Davis is healthy and Trae Young and Anthony Davis really end up having good chemistry. Because if the Wizards end up making a big jump from what they were this past season or the last 3 seasons, but from 17 wins to, say, 43 wins and a 6 seed, or maybe even the play-in, somewhere in that general area, it's not going to be because A.J. Dybantsa was the Rookie of the Year. It's going to be because Anthony Davis was healthy and played 60-plus games, maybe 65-plus games. And the combination of Trae Young and Anthony Davis worked. That's why the Wizards will be good this year, or better, improve this year. And maybe even if Anthony Davis is around and healthy in 2027, even better than that in 2027, 2028. I'm not saying that Dybantsa won't be a contributor. I think he will be, and I think there will be opportunities. But if they make the big jump from terrible, losing 26 of their last 27, 17-win season, to 43-39 or 44-38 and a 6 seed, or, as a 7 seed needing to just win once to get into the actual Eastern Conference, field, it's because Anthony Davis was healthy and played a lot of basketball. It's not because A.J. Dybantsa was the Rookie of the Year, because Cooper Flagg was the Rookie of the Year and the Mavericks won 26 games. So that's just the nature of the NBA. He could be great, and the promise could be overwhelming. And this time next year, we could be really looking forward to 2027, 2028. But if he's the Rookie of the Year and Anthony Davis doesn't play 60-plus, it's not going to be a great season. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Now that we know, what do you think? And what do you make of him comparing his game to Len Bias? 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. What a busy day it turned out to be, and a busy evening. The Nats had an 8-6 lead going into the ninth, and then not only blew it, but they literally gave up 8 runs in the top of the ninth to lose to the Phillies 14-9. Not a great job by Brad Lord, who's actually been okay recently. 14-9 was the final. The Caps made a big trade. They acquired St. Louis winger Jordan Kyrou in exchange for Connor McMichael and the 16th pick in Friday's NHL draft. That's a big deal. And right when we went off the air yesterday, I did flip on the World Cup because Portugal and Ronaldo were up first. And Ronaldo scored a goal probably 10, 12 minutes into the game. And it was a beauty. And I don't think I've seen any athlete like have an expression of, oh my God, I just had literally 10,000 pounds lifted off my back, because he had not scored a goal in international competition since 2021. He went on to score one more. The stars in this World Cup, I believe this is part of the story of the first week and a half here of the World Cup, is that the stars have come out to play. I mean, Messi's got 5 goals. Mbappe's got 4 goals. The guy from Norway, what's his name again? Sorry.
Erling Haaland.
Haaland's got 4 goals, right? 4 goals.
Yeah.
And now Ronaldo's got 2. I'm sure there are other big stars. I don't know them by name. But I don't know. I was watching it, and you could just feel through the television how big of a deal it was for him to get a goal for the first time in 5 years in international competition, especially with all of the other big stars going nuts. Ronaldo is 41 years old. So there is a legitimate excuse for him not being maybe the player he once was. And then, of course, last night, the NBA draft. A.J. Dybantsa, the first pick in the draft, was asked to compare himself to somebody that probably many haven't compared him to, and he threw out Len Bias. I don't see that comp. I'll be honest with you. I don't see the Tracy McGrady comp. I don't see those as comps. I think the comp is more, again, I'm not saying that he's going to become Kevin Durant, but I think it's more stylistically Durant. Tall, long, big wingspan, can put it on the floor, really good in the mid-range. I think maybe Dybantsa's got an opportunity to be an even better finisher. And I do think the stroke is there for him to turn into a good three-point shooting threat as well, even though he wasn't necessarily that in college. So 301-230-0980. We'll open it up for calls on the Wizards selecting A.J. Dybantsa. We now know who it is. They did not trade back into the first round to select anybody else. They've got 2 more picks tonight in the second round. But your reaction to Dybantsa, do you love it? Do you like it? Or are you just meh about it? And then what do you make of him comping himself to Len Bias? 301-230-0980. Skip, kick it off for us.
Kevin, I am so relieved that they picked Dybantsa. So relieved. I understand the upside of Darren Peterson. I get it, okay? But your number 1 pick has to be more of a sure thing character-wise. You can't take that risk character-wise, with a number 1 pick, and especially this franchise, which has been down these last few years. And so I just felt like if the talent is close, there's not a big, huge gap between
right.
Darren
No,
Peterson
you're right.
and Dybantsa.
Yeah.
And he's bigger. Size. I've heard that the OKC, Sam Presti way of doing things is you always go for size.
Positional size, yes, was an OKC
positional size.
part of their formula, right?
So for those reasons, and the bias comparison, I totally agree with you, is not really, I don't see it. However, the fact that he's aware of Lynn
No, I
bias.
like that. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's
You
easy
know,
to please us, Skip. We're easy to please.
You're right. Now, I'm thinking maybe he thought about this area, but the fact that he thinks like that he's a smart, worldly kind of guy, that's what we need. He travels the world. I think he said he went to get his clothes.
Well, yeah, he's got parents that are from different places. He's got a very interesting background. He's got a very interesting father. And Jesse Doherty, who wrote about his father, who's very prominent in A.J. Dybantsa's life. He's his agent. A.J. Dybantsa does not have outside representation. Jesse's going to jump on with us towards the end of the show to talk about Dybantsa and what he's learned from writing about his father. Very interesting. Look, everything about him says like he's got a charisma to him. He says the right things.
He does not have that. So let's face it.
But
he does not have charisma.
But I don't need. I mean, we can go down the list of superstars who weren't extroverts, Skip. There are plenty of those too. You just want to get it right on the player. I understood the risk with Peterson. I did, and that I prefaced everything I said about Peterson and was very and continue to be very interested in what was going on and what is potentially going on with Darren Peterson. I talked about it yesterday. I think that Ramona Shelburne story from May 8th at ESPN.com, that emergency room ambulance visit from him that he had to take in September because he thought he was dying, really impacted him psychologically. You can tell, and it may have had a big part in all of the missed time. But I'm telling you, as a player...
Why is he taking creatine? First of all, he's kind of skinny, and somebody should have been monitoring that. Where is the family involvement in, what are you doing with your body?
I'm not even buying the creatine thing. I'm not even buying it because at a program like Kansas, are you telling me a blue blood program isn't going to be able to make sure that he's doing the right things from a supplement, from a nutritional, from a training standpoint? Of course, I'm not buying it. What I did buy was his quote saying, after that, I was scared that it was going to happen again about the full body cramp and them having to rush him to the hospital because he thought he was dying. I think that was probably, look, I'm just projecting and speculating here, but I have a feeling that had a lot to do with what went on this year. I am convinced, Skip, had Darren Peterson had a normal college one season at Kansas and all this other stuff wasn't a part of the makeup and of the description of him, I think he would have been an easy number one pick and would have been thought of as a no-brainer number one.
Totally agree with you on that.
Okay.
But it is what it is, and I'm just glad we got a guy that we can trust is going to always do and say the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no. The guy's got personality. He's got charisma. And, oh, by the way, he's a really, really good talent as well. Exactly. So I'm excited. I am. I mean, just because I would have not, if I had been in the room and knew certain things about Darren Peterson that scared me off, I would have said it's AJ. Although I actually would have said it's Caleb Wilson, but that's beyond the point. Beyond that, Jeff Goodman, longtime college basketball writer, tweeted something out last night right before the draft. He said one NBA GM said to him about Darren Peterson, quote, Peterson's the most talented player in this draft. That's not a debate, but he's also the most terrifying. I just don't think Washington can roll the dice on him because they can't afford to miss on this pick, closed quote.
Couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah, and I think they went for high ceiling, higher floor. Maybe, they went with the kind of, okay, maybe Boozer's got the highest floor among the top three. Maybe Peterson's got the highest ceiling, but the combination, the aggregate score of high ceiling, high floor was Dybantsa, and that's who they picked. Thanks, Skip. Appreciate it. Let's go to Bay. Bay, what's your thoughts on A.J. Dybantsa being picked number 1 overall, and what did you make of his personal comparison to one Len Bias?
Hey, Kev, thanks for taking my call, man.
Sure,
I really
babe.
appreciate it, man. And I'm excited about A.J. Dybantsa. I love his posture. I love the way he talks. I love the way his game has elevated since he's been in high school. He's a workaholic, and he's a team player. The Len Bias comparison is kind of tough because I've never seen nothing like Len Bias since Len Bias. So for him to say that, and like you said and the other caller said, it's a great that he's aware of those type of things. Maybe he does, his frame gets to that point. But outside of that, I don't see him as a Len Bias. I can honestly say he probably is more like a Paul George, but not fragile. That's my comp. And,
you know what?
I'm glad we got him.
That's a pretty good one. I've said,
Yes,
and I'm not saying that, again, I want to preface this because when you compare two great players, kind of all-time great players, you got to be careful of how people take it. I think that he plays stylistically like Kevin Durant. Like, I think that could be what he develops into in terms of his style. Unbelievable in the mid-range, using the dribble mid-range. I hope he becomes a good catch off a low block screen in the mid-range, but can also finish with the dribble, which I think he can. I think that he will become a good three-point shooter. I think the stroke is there. The percentages weren't there, but you don't really want to. It's 1 year. There's everything about the team he was playing on, the style, who was with him, who he's playing against. But I think at the NBA level, I'd be surprised if he doesn't become a legitimate three-point threat. My guy G from the shop, Dybantsa and KD. KD, you agree with me, G? Yeah, that's stylistically. Am I saying he's going to become Kevin Durant? No, I'm not saying that. It'd be great if he became Kevin Durant. But I think that's what he reminds me of. He's not 7 feet. He's not 6'11". He's 6'8", 6'9". But the wingspan and the way he handles the ball and the way he gets to the mid-range and shoots. Although I will say this about a KD Dybantsa comparison. I should have said this before. KD shoots the ball at a higher level. The ball, if you watch Dybantsa, it doesn't get to the far outreaches of his arm and his fingertips. He shoots it a little bit shorter than that. It's a good release. It's a good stroke, the whole thing. Durant's shot virtually unblockable because of not only the height, but where the ball leaves his fingertips at the absolute highest point that it can leave his fingertips from. That's not necessarily Dybantsa, but I think with, the ability to, he was awesome in the mid-range. We'll see it again, hopefully at the NBA level. What else, Bay?
Outside of AD, man, we hope that he plays 35 to 40 games. And I do believe with this young roster that we do have, they are capable of winning 40 games this season. If Trae Young stays healthy, because we really never had a point guard in a long time. So if he stays healthy and the guys can, like what you said with the bench players, they can come in and give each other a breather and still get quality minutes and grow as a unit, I think we can win 40 games this year.
Thanks, Bay. I like the Paul George comp that you gave me. I did not think about that one. That's not a bad comp for Dybantsa, except with a tougher exterior. Let's hope. That's the truth. And by the way, staying healthy for longer. And by the way, in terms of 40 wins, look, to me, next season, if we're just talking about next season, it's all about Anthony Davis. A, does he play on the team? B, if he plays on the team, does he play 65-plus games? Because if he does, then they're going to win 40 minimum. I think it'll be more than 40. I think they could win 43, 44, 45 and be, a 6 seed, a 5 seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I do. Next year, short term, it's all about AD. He is the one player on the team that we know is an elite level player when he's healthy. He is an elite top 7, 8, 9, 10 player in the league when he is healthy and he's playing. That's, of course, the big if. Let's go to Raymond in Clinton. Raymond, go ahead. Raymond, you there? Looks like Raymond's gone. We need to get to a break anyway. We've got a phone line open if you want to weigh in. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Your reaction to the Wizards taking A.J. Dybantsa and your reaction to A.J. Dybantsa comparing himself to Len Bias. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. You know what I like the most about Dybantsa? Because all of these comps, and I'm just reading a lot of you who are tweeting, all the comps. Tracy McGrady, I guess, is the one that gets comped to the most. I don't see that. Tracy McGrady, I think, was a more explosive athlete. I know that Dybantsa tested very well. Watch him. He's not like a super quick, super explosive athlete. He's long. He can get to the rim. He can finish, obviously, at the rim, certainly at the college level. I love the way he competes. He is an alpha competitor. And, looking at the team right now, who is that person long-term of the young players? I don't know if they have that among their, young guys. I mean, you would hope that Trae Young and Anthony Davis can be veteran alphas on the team if the team's going to be any good here in the very short term. But I don't see Tracy McGrady. I don't see Len Bias as a comp. I don't see Tracy McGrady was a ridiculous, explosive athlete. I think Bay had a really good comp. I think Paul George, and let's just hope he's healthier than Paul George, and has a little bit more of a clutch gene than Paul George had or has. I think stylistically, KD is closer. He's not Kevin Durant. I don't think he's going to be Kevin Durant, but I think that the way he gets to his mid-range is similar to Kevin Durant. Durant's not like the greatest ball handler, but he's an effective ball handler. I think that's what Dybantsa looks like to me right now. He's not a great ball handler, but he's a very effective ball handler, and he's long and he's big enough to create space, and he's good in the mid-range. I mean, he's good going up over somebody. He's good stopping and then fading away. He's good on, with moves around the rim. And I do think his stroke is good enough for him to become a much better three-point shooter than he was at BYU. And I think he's going to have to be, because you don't want that position being somebody that can't knock down threes with the purpose of being able to space the floor and make it easier for everybody else. Look, having a Trae Young and an Anthony Davis out there is going to make it really easy for A.J. Dybantsa. He's not going to face defenses who are totally hell-bent on stopping him. As a defender, I don't mind him as a defender. He's long. He's going to be a difficult guy, to shoot over, as a 6'8" 6'9" small forward, with his wingspan. But Tracy McGrady, no. Len Bias, no. Look, one of the reasons he's not a comp for Len Bias is he's more of a creator than Len Bias ever was. Len Bias was not a creator with the ball in his hands. It's not what he was. Anybody that tells you that he was going to be Michael Jordan didn't watch him play enough or doesn't know enough about basketball. Jordan and Bias were totally different. Now, athletically, they were similar. I mean, Bias was truly, for his era, one of the great athletes in basketball at any level, and he would have become that in the NBA. He was Dominique Wilkins, Sean Kemp, Michael Jordan, that kind of springy, ridiculous, vertical, athlete. And he was a power dunker. Sean Kemp, to me, along with Neek, are the two best power dunkers, Vince Carter, of all time. But Bias would have been that. Dybantsa is just different. I think he's craftier than he gets credit for. I think he's able to find, with sort of a methodical approach, the right space for the mid-range. I love his stroke. I do not think, what was his shooting percentage from three at BYU? It wasn't good. I know that. But
like 33%.
What was it?
Like 33%, I think.
Yeah, he's gonna be a decent three-point shooter at the NBA level. The stroke is fine, more than fine. Yeah, 33.1%. Did he have any games where he was just insanely good from the three-point line? He was 1 for 7 in that tournament game from the three-point line. In their quarterfinal Big 12 tournament loss against Houston, he had 26. He was 3 for 5. Yeah, he had some very good games. 3 for 4, 5 for 8, 4 for 5 against Utah, 5 for 8 against Oak State. A lot of 2 for 4 games. The percentage is, look, he had enough good three-point shooting games to back up the assertion that he's got a really good stroke. And I'm not talking about 1 for 1 or 1 for 2. I'm talking about 4 for 5 against Utah. I'm talking about 5 of 8 against Oklahoma State, 3 for 4 against Houston, one of the best defensive teams in the country last year, 3 for 5 against Houston again in the Big 12 tournament. That's not a concern at all. I think he's going to be a scorer, and a scorer at every level. He's going to be able to shoot the three. He's going to be able to score in the mid-range, and he's going to be able to finish at the rim. And he's going to be a tough matchup defensively because he's going to be able to score at all three levels. And what did he shoot from the free throw line? I know I've looked this up before, but I think he was a good free throw shooter. 77.4%. So get that up to 80% plus, and he's going to be in the, I don't know what he'll be as a rookie or a second-year guy. It takes time for these guys. Always does. But he's going to be eventually a guy that's scoring in the mid-20s a night. Low to mid-20s at night, maybe high 20s a night. He's going to go get buckets for sure. He's going to be a decent rebounder. He's going to be a decent passer. He's going to be a decent defender. Will he just be, a guy that threatens the NBA All-Star game every few years or every other year? Or is he going to become a true star? Have no earthly idea. He just turned 19 years old in January. It's hard to project these things. Like I said yesterday, the day before, and at the beginning of this show, I mean, the NBA draft, like the NFL draft, is not even coin flip territory. It's less than that with every player. The likely best players from this draft will come later in the first round and maybe even tonight. There's more probability of that happening than it being in the top, than it being number one overall. But love the pick, love the player. Just like Peterson and Wilson a little bit more. That's all. Doesn't mean I don't like him, because I do. And I love the fact that he is a competitive alpha. This young group, I think, needs that. I don't know if they have that among the young group. I'm not saying that they're not competitive, but a true take over the game at some point, because Anthony Davis and Trae Young aren't going to be here in 5 years, maybe not even in 4 years. So at that point, this young nucleus and whatever they add next year is going to be the group that you're hopefully contending with. And this one's got to be right. But by the way, it doesn't have to be more right than all of the other players they've selected so far. Now, do I see, a superstar among their young group of now, 7 or 8 first-round draft choices on their roster? I think that's what it is. I don't see that, but I see a lot of really good players, and I see a couple of players that could be all-stars, starting with Sarr and George, and I think maybe even Will Riley. I think those 3 could be future all-stars. And I think the others, I don't think they've missed in terms of, somebody being completely not ready and not NBA quality. And they've added. I'm intrigued by Jaden Hardy. I'm still intrigued with Cam Whitmore. Dude is an athlete. All right. Some football next. from my guy Road Chaser on X on Twitter. He's a leaner Jamal Mashburn. Is he actually leaner? Maybe. And he tells me to start on a realistic level because his tweet prior to that was KD stop. KD's an all-time elite shooter. Yeah, I didn't say he was KD. I tried to preface it by saying, look, don't take this the wrong way because I'm not saying he's going to become Kevin Durant. Stylistically, in terms of the way they get to their mid-range, and with their height and with their length, there's a similarity stylistically. I actually really am bullish on AJ Dybantsa becoming a very good NBA shooter, including a very good three-point shooter. And, you know, the Wizards actually would have multiple, like already with Trae Young and Trae Johnson. Let's just start right there. You're talking about excellent three-point shooters. Trae Johnson's range, and they have two players. Just hear me out on this one, okay? I'm not saying they're going to win the NBA title. They have two players who can space the floor with their three-point shooting distance capability. That is very, very intriguing. Young can basically, you know, is in range when he crosses half court. Same thing with Trae Johnson. I mean, it's Steph. I'm not saying that they're Steph Curry, but in terms of their comfort level in shooting long distance threes, you know, 26 feet or further, 28 feet or further, they've got two guys that can really shoot it in Trae Young and Trae Johnson. And I'm not saying AJ Dybantsa is going to become that, but if you have that, man, the floor looks different. Watch the Warriors all those years with Clay and with Steph. But I think he's going to be a really good three-point shooter. I do. This from Jameer. Jameer writes, I actually think the comp is on the team right now. It's Will Riley. Will Riley's a lot skinnier, man. The frame is different. Dybantsa is bigger and stronger. I don't even know what the height difference is. What's Will Riley? Is Will Riley 6'9", 6'10"? Will Riley's 6'9", 180 pounds. I mean, Dybantsa's just got a bigger, thicker build. He's more physically there. They're both the same age. I like Will Riley a lot, though. I really liked him at Illinois, even though I didn't think he was the best player necessarily on Illinois' team. Illinois had a couple of players that have been very interesting in recent years, including DeSumo, who just signed an extension with Minnesota. Loved him there. But I don't see that comp. But I don't see that comp. All right, let me switch subjects real quickly. So the other day we played the George Kittle sound from Pardon My Take, the podcast that he was on, when he was asked about Brandon Ayuk. This is what he said.
The last time I saw Ayuk was, call it week 6, 7, or 8. I don't really know. But I used to make it a habit of mine to go out early in the morning before meetings to watch him train because he'd always be out there early. And I watched him run over 22 miles an hour and stop on a dime. So he's still got it. Mm-hmm. Or at least, you know, that was 8 months ago. So I don't really know. But yeah, you guys have fun with that, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
That's perfectly put.
I'm gonna have a lot of fun with that.
Perfectly put.
I guess.
Still got it. Have fun with that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have fun with all that comes with it.
So that last part, you guys have fun with it. You guys have fun with all that comes with it. I said to you yesterday, was it yesterday or Monday that we played this sound? I forget now. Yesterday. But I basically said, you know, he gave you the good, you know, he gave you hope that, you know, as recently as week 8 or week 9 of last year, he looked like Brandon Ayuk physically. But then he also gave, I think, a simultaneous warning. This from my guy Stan, who hasn't emailed me in forever. Stan wrote, this was so obvious from George Kittle. Kittle's giving you a buyer beware. He went into some sort of description after that, but basically a banner that says buyer beware. I think some people took the Kittle as, whoa, there's some hope there that physically he's going to be good. And by the way, he's got a good work ethic. He's the first out there training. Last year, before he went AWOL and before they started voiding all of his money. I don't know. I think that there was as much of a buyer beware. I agree with Stan. I think that there was, hey, he can really go. There's no doubt about it. But be careful with him. Did you hear it that way, Max? That's the way I heard it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Because I think a lot of people, and I just looked after our show yesterday at some of the reactions, a lot of people said, man, Kittle is really pushing Ayuk, really thinks he is ready to go. I think there was definitely a buyer beware there.
I want to play this part of it too.
Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't be happy either after a team paid me $130 million.
I know that can be, the taxes in California. He's probably like, oh, this sucks. I got so much taxes to pay.
More money, more problems, right?
Yes.
So
100%.
we'll take him. He'll make less money and he'll be happier. And then he'll stop posting weird stuff on social media.
Yeah, this is clearly, I mean, I don't know I don't know who was he talking to.
So
Kittle.
he's talking to PFT. PFT's the resident Washingtonian and Washington fan on that show. So he's kind of the one talking about it. But yeah, it's very tongue in cheek.
Yeah, there's just a bit of sarcasm there. Yeah, I mean, he didn't make 130 million, but he got paid 50.
Damn near.
That's a lot of money. And yeah, I mean, it's George Kittle, who is a very optimistic, always has been out in San Francisco teammate and a cheerleader of all, including Jimmy Garoppolo. I remember nobody was a bigger cheerleader for Garoppolo, even when Garoppolo wasn't great. He's essentially saying, yeah, the dude can really go, but beware, because he a bit crazy. Yeah, that's Brandon Ayuk in a nutshell right now. I mean, we don't have all the details clearly, but yes, he can really go. Javon Kinlaw would be listing him as a player that can really go with a few expletives as adjectives. But he a bit nuts right now. That's the problem. So I saw Sports Illustrated put out like the 3 teams for Brandon Ayuk and projected 2026 stats for Brandon Ayuk. Well, Washington is the front runner, of course, and they even describe the chase for Ayuk as kind of a one-team race, even though they list New Orleans and Carolina as 2 teams that would be interested in Ayuk, 2 other teams that would be interested in Ayuk. And the projected 2026 stats for Ayuk, 71 catches, 762 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I think I would take that right now, wouldn't you, in his first season? Because let's, say that Terry's at 70-something and 900-plus yards with a true number, a 1A. Don't ask me to put them in order, which is 1 and which is 1A, because I don't want to upset everybody, because I don't even know if this guy can even play football. But 700-plus yards, 6 touchdowns, and combine that with Terry with 900-plus yards and another 80 catches and another 9 touchdowns. And then you got Chig, who's going to probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70 catches, 500, 600 yards, 5-6 touchdowns. Yeah, I'll take that right now in terms of his projected stats. I'd like it to be more in line with what he was in San Francisco in 2023, and his average yards per catch in San Francisco, he was close to 18 yards a reception. That was the most incredible part about his 2023 regular season. 2023 regular season, Ayuk caught 75 balls for 1,342 yards at 17.9 yards per reception. So maybe I need a little bit more from him in year 1, but the combination of he and Terry and Chig and whatever they've got coming out of the backfield and whatever they got running game wise, if you could put together, 150 receptions between Terry and Ayuk, that'd be pretty good. That'd be really good. 140 receptions between the two of them, somewhere in the neighborhood of, 1,800 yards, somewhere around there. I think we'd take that. 12 combined touchdowns. Ayuk, by the way, in 2023, 75 catches, 1342, 7 touchdowns on the 17.9 yards per reception. Whew. He was really good that year. He also led the 49ers and led the NFC in first down receptions that season. How about that? I didn't know that part. Yeah, he moved the chains a lot with, Brock Purdy, and remember that year Sam Darnold was quarterbacking some of that team when Purdy was hurt. Right? I'm pretty sure he did. Didn't Purdy miss a couple of games and Sam Darnold was the backup, or am I thinking of a different backup for them? Was it Josh Johnson?
It was Mac Jones, I think, is who you're thinking
Mac
of.
Jones. No, Sam Darnold.
In 23?
In 23.
Oh,
Sam
yes,
Darnold.
that was Sam.
Yeah. 22 was Garoppolo.
Yes.
And Purdy. Yeah, because Purdy, yeah. You're 24
that
is the
was Nick
season
Mullins.
you're thinking of. It was no, it wasn't even Josh Johnson. It was Josh Dobbs.
Oh, yeah, man. What a run on backup quarterbacks the Niners have had.
I feel like Josh Johnson's been everywhere. He's pretty much
literally, yeah. And some twice.
Josh Johnson's career, man, is really...
It's a long list of teams.
Not to mention, I'm pretty sure he played in that UFL, too.
Sure did.
Where is he right now? What team is he on now?
Cincinnati?
Right. Oh, my God. Look at his resume.
It's
unbelievable. He got drafted in the 5th round by Tampa in 2008. Tampa Bay, 49ers, the Sacramento Mountain Lions, have no idea. Cleveland, Cincinnati, San Francisco, back to Cincinnati, Jets, Colts, Bills, Ravens, Giants, Texans, Raiders. Then here's the thing that I remembered. San Diego Fleet. I think they were in the UFL.
Yes.
Then the Redskins in 2018. Lions, LA Wildcats.
The AAF. My apologies.
AAF. 49ers, Jets, Ravens, Broncos, 49ers, Ravens, Washington again, obviously, last year, and now in Cincinnati as a 40-year-old. What has he made during his career? I don't think it's a Chase Daniel career, because Chase Daniel got paid, a couple of times as the premier backup, if not a borderline starter. He's in the Andrew Brandt NFL Business Hall of Fame, all-time business Hall of Fame, making so much money without ever really playing much. I can't imagine there's been a player that's been to this many teams, and so many of these teams more than once.
Google AI overview says 13.46 million over his career.
Has he played as a quarterback for more teams than anybody else?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I can confidently say that he has.
It looks like, if you count up every team, it looks like he played for at least half the league, because several of those teams are 2 and 3 times. Cincinnati, Washington, Baltimore, San Francisco, Denver, the Jets, the
Top
Lions.
player with the most franchise NFL history include Josh Johnson, number 1 at 14 teams. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh McCown, Andre Roberts, 9 teams.
So it's not even close.
Yeah,
he's number 1.
Number 1 by
14
far.
teams. Josh Johnson's played for. Jay Gruden, I've mentioned this before. Jay Gruden told me that Josh Johnson's one of the smartest players that he ever coached. And that's what happens when you are that smart. And, oh, by the way, a really good dude, which apparently Josh Johnson is. Teams want you in their locker room, period. They want you in their quarterback room. And no matter how many starts you have in your career, and I'll find that out in a second, it doesn't matter. You're going to keep getting paid if you're smart and you're a really good team guy. And for him, never demanded anything, and kind of was okay with his role. You know, he in 10, how many years? Hold on. So ultimately, he's only played in 10 NFL seasons because of the other leagues and time off. He's only started 11 games in his career. 2-9 as a starter. How did we get on Josh Johnson? I have no idea. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
I saw you and your dad in New York at the finals, and you were there to watch the game. But you're seeing these guys that are now your peers. How close did you feel to the moment being real that this is now going to be your job? And as you watch them, like, how ready do you feel to join that group of the best in the world?
Yeah, definitely at that weekend, I was definitely thinking about it. Like, these are going to be my peers soon. Obviously, I have a lot of work to do to get to the finals, but I definitely think I'm in the right, direction to get there.
Okay. The context was talking about being at the finals, which is why that soundbite is a little bit the reaction was, I got a lot of work
A lot of
to
waves
get
on
to the
Twitter.
finals, but that's because the question was asked about him and his dad being at the finals. AJ Dybantsa last night on with Scott on his Sports Center. There's more AJ Dybantsa that I want to play for you for sure coming up, but I also just wanted to look ahead to tonight because the Wizards still have 2 picks. They have 51 overall and they have 60 overall, which will be the last pick in the second round. The Wizards have a lot of draft picks, not that they've accumulated, and they will have lots of opportunities. And by the way, great, sort of trade ammunition as well moving forward. They have done the last 3 years well. It doesn't guarantee that they're going to win a championship. It doesn't guarantee that they're going to be a 45 to 50 win team for 7 or 8 straight years and be in the playoffs every year and have a chance to get to the NBA Finals. But I think what they've done at a pretty smart, competent level. And it did pay off a little bit with finally getting the number 1 pick. It would have been better to get it with Wemby in the draft or with Cooper Flagg in the draft, in my opinion, at the top of the draft. But they've gotten themselves a very good player, and they've accumulated a lot of young talent. And with everything that they've done, they were able to go out and get a Trae Young and get an Anthony Davis. We can, kind of debate as to whether or not the money Trae Young's getting is too much. I think it is, but then again, I also want him to be on the team. And if Brooklyn or Chicago or anybody else was going to give him that in the open market with very little available in free agency, they were kind of forced to do that. But there's still more to do. This is, a draft that a lot of people felt like was pretty deep, and some players went back to school. So, who's available for them? Are they going to be looking for a big? Are they going to go just best player available? Well, 2 picks and the opportunity to maneuver around. Maybe they maneuver into the early part of the second round. I really like a player that I thought would get picked last night and who did not get picked. Now, it's not that the Wizards have a need for an Isaiah Evans type, but I think Isaiah Evans from Duke is, number 1, a really, really good shooter. Number 2, one of the quickest release shooters that we've seen in this draft and really even in a couple of drafts. And he's got really good size and a really high motor. I like Evans. I thought he was one of their more clutch performers for them in March as well. But that's not necessarily a need, and they've got a Trae Johnson. They've got a Trae Young who's going to shoot. The Trays are going to shoot a lot. And then AJ, I think, is going to be a very good 3-point shooter. But I really do like Isaiah Evans. I think if the right fit is going to be very interesting. There are some other guards that I like, but in terms of, bigger guys and forwards, if you will, I don't even know if this guy will get drafted tonight. But in terms of tough, hard-nosed versatility between being able to play the 3 and maybe even the 4, Nick Martinelli from Northwestern. He is as tough, as high IQ, as tricky and clever. I mean, this guy, if he doesn't have a long NBA career, will be tearing up, pickup games at Bethesda Sport and Health in the YMCA because he's got that kind of a game. But he's a really good shooter, an underrated shooter. He's a very smart, tough rebounder. Now, he's only 6'7", but he plays bigger. He's 230, 235. That's the kind of guy that will be there, 51, 60. Maybe he doesn't get drafted. I would love to see Nick Martinelli on the Wizards roster. Would love it. You know, no doubt that this guy has been an overachiever his entire college career, and I would guess that it's going to continue at the NBA level. You know, let's not forget that the guy from Maryland, Juju Reese, Julian played very well at the end of last year. I don't know if they see, you know, Juju as the true backup to Sarr. Vukovic right now is probably, you know, that. But they could certainly use more front court size and help tonight. All right. AJ Dybantsa, a lot of interviews last night. And he's a good interview. This guy has some charisma. You can tell he is a sharp kid, smart, good communicator. Max picked out a couple of his best sound bites from last night after being picked number one. This was him on the Wizards veteran additions, you know, in Trae Young and Anthony Davis, and then what he can bring to the team.
You land with a Wizards team that made some pretty big veteran additions at the deadline. Just, I'm interested to know, what do you think you bring to this team, and what do you think about the prospects of winning right away with it?
Yes, I think I bring versatility. Obviously, them re-signing Trae, having AD. I mean, I think I could just fit in as like an off-ball guy that can just score in different ways, score in transition, score off the catch, score off the dribble. But also just, I mean, they challenged me when they talked to me saying, like, if we pick you, we want you to play defense 94 feet and pick up. So I definitely bring that too.
By the way, the message that they gave him about defending 94 feet, they got to make sure that everybody else gets that message too. They got to become a better defensive basketball team. This was AJ Dybantsa on coming into a team with that right now, because of AD and Trae Young, a wealth of experience.
So you're joining a Wizards team with Trae Young at point guard and other veteran experience. What does it mean to you to have those type of guys with you day one?
I mean, it means a lot. Just coming into the league and not having any vets is probably tough. I mean, it is tough. But having vets like all-star guys like Trae Young, Anthony Davis, guys with won chips like Anthony Davis, I think I can like kind of pick their brains and just get some easy knowledge.
Anthony Davis and Trae Young are important pieces right now in this organization. And I know that there is, you know, a lot of eye rolling when it comes to both of them. Anthony Davis's, you know, injuries and availability, and Trae Young's defense and turnover, assist to turnover percentage, and what they ended up, or what they will end up paying him. But I think the most important thing as a fan of the Wizards is that what we've seen for the last 3 years is over. And now it's time to focus on winning and developing their young group of players in an environment where the team's actually trying to win games. And that's the goal. The goal isn't develop. The goal is to win and develop. And, you know, the benefit that comes with that is meaningful basketball. It's always meaningful to a certain point when you're developing, but you've got to get to the point where it's meaningful as it relates to winning. You're trying to win. The opponent that's coming in is trying to win. The opponent that's coming in knows you're trying to win. That's a different mindset that they'll be facing in their opponents in 2026, 2027. Most of the Wizards' opponents arrived at Capital One knowing the Wizards weren't trying to win. That's a different, you know, overall vibe versus playing a team that's trying to win and capable of winning. And to get there, you got to have some veteran guys that have won a little bit and have played on teams that were trying to win. AD's a champion. He was the key to that bubble championship for the Lakers. He's a top 10 player in this game when he's fully healthy. He's probably closer to 5 than he is to 10 when he's completely healthy. This is what they've got to have. You had to get to that point. did they accelerate it? Was there a plan to be terrible for one more year? I'm glad the plan wasn't for that. I'm glad they're coming out of what we just witnessed. And I think with this, the additions of AD and Trae Young, all of the young players, and now the addition of a number 1 overall, there is some buzz. There was some buzz last night at the Anthem. There was some buzz last night on social media. Sometimes, and this isn't to pat me on the back myself or anybody that does what we do on our backs, but there is a sense when you do long form, everyday sports talk radio in a town, you get a sense of what sports fans are feeling and thinking. And right now, for at least a moment, there's buzz around the Wizards, and there hasn't been for years. And by the way, it's fleeting. It can be fleeting. Once football season begins in September, we're not going to be talking about the Wizards at all, because if I did, we'd have no listeners. We'd literally be, in a terrible spot. You got to, as they say in radio, play the hits. The hits 1 through 10 right now are still our football team. But I do see a day where this buzz becomes something more substance-based, and the winning follows this effort of the last 3 years. And the sleeping giant in town, which has always been the Wizards, in my opinion, for the reasons I've articulated over the years, this is at its core a basketball town. We have arguably the best youth and high school basketball in the country. More people in this town participate in, whether it's as a player, a coach, a referee, a parent, in basketball more than any other sport. Now, the football team's number 1 in terms of consumer interest. But in terms of involvement, we're a basketball town. And Maryland and Georgetown have certainly benefited over a long period of time of being 2 power D1 programs in a market with an NBA team, but not an NBA team that enough people cared about because of the results. So I truly believe that if they are on a path to being 45 to 50 plus wins a year, being in the upper echelon of the NBA, of the NBA's Eastern Conference, where they're no worse than a 4 or a 5 seed every year, and maybe, just maybe, a few of those years, they're legitimate contenders to win the Eastern Conference championship and to get to the NBA Finals. I personally think that it would become not even close the number 2 in town. And you'd have distance between number 1, the football team, and number 2, but then there would be distance between the number 2 and the number 3. The Wizards are the sleeping giant. They are. They've always been that. And the John and Brad teams, I love those teams. I love John Wall. I loved, the veterans that they had on those teams. I think Randy Whitman was a phenomenal coach because he was. The year with the year in 2017 when they got to a 7th and deciding game with Scott Brooks as the coach in Boston, I loved that. I was all in. I knew, though, that they weren't a true championship contender, but they were winning playoff series, and there was buzz around it. I remember those days coming in after some of those big playoff games or even a big regular season game. There was the buzz was consistent. Right now, there's some buzz. It's time for them, and they realize this, to make sure that they can take advantage of it. Because another season like the last 3, and you could have lost everybody. And they've lost everybody for the most part. But you could sense last night that there is an appetite for the NBA team in this town to be good, to be a part of what we just watched over the last 2 months. That's the great thing about, 2014, 15, 17, those years is like they were actually a part of it. And they weren't a one and doneer. They were winning series. That first year when they beat Chicago and had Indiana on the ropes. That second year when they swept Toronto and should have beaten Atlanta. The year they beat Atlanta and Wall had an unbelievable closeout game and got to a seventh game against Boston. That's being a part of it, at least. They haven't been a part of it for 9 years. They haven't been a part of it, even when they had Russell Westbrook and Beal was scoring at high levels. They weren't a part of it. They weren't a part of the mix. I'm glad they did what they did. I'm glad they did what they did 3-4 years ago. The decisions that Ted made doesn't guarantee anything, but it gives them their best chance of being a product in town that isn't dead last, because that's where it is right now. But it's got massive upside. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Do you guys agree with me that, A, there's some buzz that we haven't had around this franchise in town in a long time? And then, most importantly, do you agree with me that the Wizards could easily be the number 2 in D.C. in the DMV if they start winning? 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com. Dave Sheehan, who wrote for the Post as a columnist for many years and now is with that Notice, which is News of the United States. It's a D.C. I guess it's trying to be a Washington Post replacement. They actually have a sports section. Dave wrote on yesterday, actually. He wrote a column, "The Wizards' make or break moment has arrived." And I'm just going to read from the first two paragraphs. "To be a Washington Wizards fan is to understand at a bone-deep cellular level that your faith in fandom will forever be repaid in pain. It's not just the losing, the 48-year title drought, these last 8 consecutive sub-500 seasons, the staggering 196 losses over the past 3 campaigns, but the accompanying small humiliations that suck the soul from one's being and the foundational failures that can make it feel permanent." Yeah, that kind of sums up the hardcore Wizards fan of recent vintage. He writes, "This is a franchise that hasn't won a playoff series in nearly a decade, that since moving to DC from Baltimore in 1973 has produced just four homegrown all-stars, that over the past 3 seasons has strung together as many losing streaks of 14 games or more as the rest of the NBA combined, that arguably hasn't featured a generational Hall of Fame type talent in the prime of their career since Wes Unseld a half century ago." That's probably true, because players like Bernard King and Moses Malone and Michael Jordan, of course, in terms of generational talents, they were not in the primes of their career. Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes were the 2 generational Hall of Famers that played in the primes of their careers as both Baltimore Bullets and Washington Bullets. The question I'm asking is, do you agree with me that if the winning actually follows the pain of the last several years, can the Wizards rise to a level in town that puts it in the spot of number 2? I personally don't think in my lifetime the football team is ever going to be anything but number 1 in this city, in this area, in the DMV. I just think it'll take a long time for that to be supplanted. And Dan Snyder did his best to chase away, a significant part of that fan base. But even what is left over and what has jumped back on is still in pure numbers, just much more of a mass appeal product. But I think the Wizards, if this commitment to doing something to ensure their best chance of being, a contending team, which they have not legitimately been since 1979. They have not legitimately been a championship contending team since they were last in the NBA Finals in 1979. That is true. I mean, even some of those teams with Wall and Beal, with Gill, Antoine, etc., and Karan, they weren't championship contending teams. But if they got to that level, do you think, like I do, that it would be the clear-cut number 2? Let's start with Aveen. Aveen, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, I feel like there's a really good chance it could be a clear-cut number 2. And I mean, I just don't think there's much competition either, because I think people are jaded about, the Nationals. They don't really spend on the team until they start spending on the team. People are going to take them as seriously. And, the Wizards have gone through this process, and they have, real big-time star talent. And I'm just wondering, I'll ask you, is this feels like the most, I have to see this in person. I can't miss watching a game, at least seeing what it looks like. Like,
yes.
This feels like can't miss type stuff. Like, because you have Dybantsa, a really hyped up number 1 pick now, and you have 2 established big time stars in Trae Young and Anthony Davis. Like, I want to see that in person, and I'm not sure I felt like that even with, Wall and Beal. It felt like there was a ceiling on those teams. And I'm not saying this team is going to be better than those teams right away, but it's just like really interesting. Like, you want to see what it looks like, and I'm sure they're going to get a lot of national attention for that too. So what do you feel like about that? Is this like one of the most like can't miss kind of teams, Wizards teams we've had?
I mean, even before last night and even before they won the lottery, I felt like the additions of Anthony Davis and Trae Young and the intention to try to win games next year, along with whatever they would add in the draft and not even knowing that they would have the number one pick at that point, for me, and I know that not everybody is as big of a Wizards fan as I am. But for me, it was going to be can't wait for the schedule to come out. Can't wait for, late October when they tip it up. By the way, hoping that they would be a fully healthy team when the season began. Because I still think that 2026, 2027 is about Anthony Davis more than it's about anybody else in terms of whether or not the next season is going to be a playoff season, a 43, 44, 45 win season. It's about Anthony Davis. It's not about A.J. Dybantsa. Cooper Flagg had a phenomenal rookie of the year campaign last year. His team won 26 games. They have to have their veterans and their best veteran end up playing 65 plus. And yeah, we could be in for a season that has truly meaningful basketball. I'm going to tell you, Aveen, during those Wall Beal years, I didn't miss a game. I mean, sorry, honey, we're not going out to dinner. They're playing, they're playing the Celtics tonight, or they're playing the Heat tonight, and I want to watch the game. I've as hardcore as I am, I didn't watch last year. I barely watched. Year before, barely watched. Call me a bad fan, but it was just terrible when your team isn't trying to win. Yeah, I think that this is the most anticipated and will be the most anticipated start. The problem in towns like ours is the start of the basketball season coincides with still the early to mid portion of the NFL season. So it's not like we're going to, drop the football talk every day, but we're certainly going to talk about the games and then the post games. If they're a competitive team, I'm going to enjoy watching this and watching Dybantsa, but I want to see Dybantsa develop on a team that's competitive. And I think there's a chance of that because of the two deals they pulled off during the winter. Anything else, Aveen?
Right. I agree with you. Davis really determines their ceiling for next year. But I'm also curious, there was that period of time in the mid to late 2010s where both the Nats and the Wizards were making the playoffs. And maybe it was because the Nats were definitely viewed as contenders who could go to the World Series, and the Wizards were kind of viewed as, more of a cute kind of mid-40s win team. But, I went to both of those playoff games, those playoff series that they played, and the Nats playoff environment was better. And
it was
that
great
just because of, how people viewed them?
Yeah, it was great. Look, I think that our sports, the DMV sports, consumer environment has changed a lot. We've become much more of a pro sports town, but we are definitely, after the football team, a bandwagon town. If the teams are good, people are going to be interested and they're going to be into it. If they're not, there's not much interest at all. I think the Wizards could be slightly different from that, but we've already seen when they're terrible, there's just not much interest in conversation about them. I'm not saying that people don't go to the games, but in terms of the conversation, I can't imagine how bad their ratings have been for their games in the last 3 years. I haven't even just looked at it. John Moran could tell us what they are, but I guarantee you they're awful. Thanks, Savine. JYD, go ahead. Do you think the Wizards have a chance to be the number 2 in this town like I do? You got to turn down your radio, JYD. We do this every time. You got to turn that radio down so you don't get confused.
Yeah, they have a chance. They have a great chance to be the number 2 team in this town. Simply because as long as they can hold the line with Will Dawkins or whatever, he has the real organization he has brought to this team now. Yes, the losing was unbearable, but when he came, we knew what we had signed up for or whatever. So yeah, the fans stayed away, and yes, it was ugly, but he did what he had to do to bring it to this point now, to make it to be upside.
Yeah, we got a shot now. We got a shot.
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
the only thing I can say is that for 2 days, I have listened to Stephen A. Smith badmouth the Wizards. He just finished this morning saying that we are an abomination. Yes, you know, and what he was going to say to the league to the league and all this stuff, whatever. I look at it like this: yes, we were bad, and yes, the owner should have done better. But I look at it like this: he has tried to correct it now by bringing in a magnificent management team that knows how to build a team. So I look at it like this, Stephen A. Smith, and I hope you're hearing this. Use your $100 million that you're making and fix your face instead of always bad mouthing the Wizards, because there are a whole lot of other bad teams out there.
Yeah,
and that's all
the Wizards are arguably, and they're in the conversation of the worst professional of the major four pro sports leagues over the last half century, going back 30 years. They're certainly in the conversation of the worst. I would imagine that the record overall has to be bottom 5 over the last 40 years in professional sports. All right. The Caps made a massive trade, apparently. Joe B's going to jump on with us to discuss. By the way, we do have our Waldorf Honda Twitter poll, X poll up for the day. WaldorfHonda.com for all of your Waldorf Honda needs. But the Waldorf Honda poll question of the day: with these offseason additions, and Trae Young, Anthony Davis were in-season additions, but of adding A.J. Dybantsa now, will the Wizards end their 5-year postseason drought and make the NBA playoffs next year? Go to @Team980 to vote on that. Yesterday was a busy day for the DMV. The Nats blew a 2-run lead in the ninth. They gave up 8 runs in the ninth to the Phillies in a dramatic 14-9 loss. Of course, last night, A.J. Dybantsa picked number 1 by the Wizards in the NBA draft. And all the while, there was a pretty significant Caps trade going on. The only thing missing from yesterday was like a new Brandon Ayuk video that we could have obsessed over for an hour or so today. Fortunately, that didn't happen. But the Caps trade was real. The Caps got Jordan Kyrou from the St. Louis Blues, and here to discuss that trade is one of my very favorite people to have on this show, the great Joe Beninati, the voice of the Washington Capitals for many, many years on Monumental currently. So, the Caps people that are in my life were texting me last night saying, I know you're watching the NBA draft, but did you see this? Of course, I didn't know much about Jordan Kyrou or the significance of it. That's why you're on. So explain it to everybody.
I was going to try and make you laugh and say, I can't wait to see A.J. Dybantsa on skates. Now, that would be
apparently he can do everything, so I'm not going to be surprised. You know how excited people get when you pick high in the first round. I mean, everybody's got, Sonny Styles is the next Ray Lewis and A.J. Dybantsa is the next, Tracy McGrady. That's where we are.
We all spend so much time watching the highlight reels, and I did on both of those athletes, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
You just watch what they're doing, and you can't help but sit there and go, hallelujah, here we go. Welcome to Washington. And I'm sure AJ will do great. And I obviously I'm rooting for the Wizards to bounce back in a big way and become a contender sometime soon.
Yeah.
With respect to Kyrou, this is a highly skilled player that's been on, I think Kevin's been on their radar for a while. I know that the scouts like what he brings to the table, and it's easy to see why. Spencer Carberry loves to play with tempo, loves to play a speed game, and this is a guy who has, when he's healthy, elite speed and quickness. Last year was a difficult year for him. I got the sense that he was dealing with an injury. His goal totals were down, and then subsequently we learned that he had surgery in April to clear things up. By all accounts, he's going to be really good, ready to go for fall camp. And if he's the Jordan Kyrou that we've seen the last 4 or 5 years in St. Louis, he brings you a bona fide 30-plus goal scorer with elite skill. And this is a guy who plugs right into your top 6 wherever you need him to go.
All right. So what does it say about just the direction of the team? Well, let me ask you this first. What could they actually be risking by trading Connor McMichael?
Well, great question, fair question. And yes, most people are going to look at the return that St. Louis got for Kyrou and said, yeah, they did well. But in these days, with there not being a lot of trade movement suspected, I mean, there are some high-profile targets still out there. But if you're going to land Jordan Kyrou, you have to pay. And that's a handsome price. There's no doubt about that. With regard to the number 16 overall pick coming up in the draft, and Connor, and then Gestrin, who I know scouts were high on a couple of years ago in his draft class. Maybe not as much raving reviews last season, but still, you had to put together a decent package of a pick, a prospect, and a player to get the likes of an all-star like Jordan Kyrou. And they did that. And you, as a Caps fan, I think you give thumbs up to management for doing it. Some will sit there and say, yeah, well, that's an overpay. In this kind of climate, I think you had to spend that much to get it. With regard to Connor, we love Connor McMichael. He's always been incredibly cooperative with us on the media side. He's easy to root for. A couple of seasons ago, he had that breakout year. I would suspect, Kevin, that I don't know that Connor ever crashes the height of Kyrou's goal scoring totals. Okay. In other words, if you put them straight up against each other. Now, last year was not a good finishing year for McMichael. What's that expression? The puck luck never really seemed to come around for him.
Right.
As opposed to the year before, where he and a number of Caps had career years. This is a very highly thought of young player, schooled by Dale Hunter, obviously of Caps past fame. I know that that's not easy to send him away like that. I know that, if I'm not mistaken, Connor was a restricted free agent, so there was some negotiating that was still coming up there potentially. But you have to, in these day and age, you have to give to get, and to get the likes of Kyrou, he had to be in that package, I'm suspecting, for St. Louis to make the move.
Is this a move that you make to add to a top six, including Alex Ovechkin, or without him?
Another great question. I think we're all holding our breath, waiting to see what the Capitals captain's going to be saying. I just get the sense that if Alex, and again, this is just one person's opinion, Kevin, I don't have inside information on this, but in my mind, if Alex was finished, if Alex was done, Alex would have already told you that. The gut feeling for me is that Alex is coming back and wants to play at least a year. I don't know anything more than that. I don't know what he's asking. I don't know if he's asking for more than 1 year, but I do get the sense that he wants to continue to play. And I do get the feeling that his body is going to allow him to train the way it needs to get ready for an NHL training camp at age 41. He'll be 41 in September. We know there's a lot of miles on those tires, but I would get the sense that if Alex feels like the team is moving in a good direction, a positive direction, that they were just a few points away from being a playoff contender last season, then who knows what. Now you add a Kyrou, I think the captain would like to be a part of that mix. Jordan, to me, spots in anywhere you need him in the top six if he's healthy. And that's the big thing. And coming off of a surgery in April, I'm going to guess that all is well. And again, if you see Jordan Kyrou at top speed, that's the kind of talent that's very, very enticing and adds in to what the Caps already have. Kevin, the Caps have a lot of crash and bang, big burly guys who do well along the boards. Kyrou is not that. Kyrou is not an intensely physical player at all. What he is a highly gifted stick handler, shooter, finisher, the kind of guy that you want to have around when you need just one shot to tie a game or win a game. There's your guy.
We're talking to Joe Beninati. So I did read that he waived his no trade clause to make this deal happen. Am I reading too much into that when I say when somebody does that, they really want to be where they're headed? And to me, that makes Washington's an attractive destination for NHL players. Is that true?
It should be. It should be. That roster is still very good. We've talked about the pipeline that's coming in advance in the future. Some of it's already here. You already had the showings of Ilya Protas and Cole Hudson. There's more coming down the pipe. And if you are in that position where you could land in Washington, I find it to be, and I would say to others who are considering it, that it would be an attractive place to play. Obviously, they've solidified and firmed up their head coaching capacity with Carberry moving forward by extending him out. This is a good spot. And I think Jordan recognizes that. There are others who will say that they only want to go to certain spots, whether it be a recent Stanley Cup champions or places where there's no state income tax, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Washington has been for quite a while a place where quality NHL players know they're going to be treated fairly and that their team's going to have a chance to compete in the playoffs. You know, last year missing the Stanley Cup playoffs with, I think, 95 points?
95
That's a rarity for this organization.
Yeah.
That's a rarity. This organization has been in the playoffs 10 of the last 12. It's obviously won the Stanley Cup playoffs in the last 8 years. They've won a Stanley Cup championship. So I do firmly believe that players recognize how great the opportunity is to play here and to be cheered on by a fan base that really loves its hockey team.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting about the Caps season is, the headline is they didn't make the playoffs, but they had 95 points, which actually would have won the Pacific Division in the Western Conference.
It's weird.
And I'm guessing that, there was no loss of confidence, clearly, because they gave him a contract extension in Spencer Carberry's, season last year, following a year in which finally the Caps had won and did win a playoff series, the first since the Cup in 2018. So a lot of confidence in Carberry, right?
Without question, and you've seen it, and hockey fans know it extremely well, and those who aren't as familiar with the NHL should know that for whatever the reasons, head coaching capacities and tenures, it's a very, very fluid situation. I mean, they're here, there, gone tomorrow before you know it. And if Spencer's heading into the last year of his current contract and you don't have him extended out, if he gets to market, he becomes the number one possible recruited head coach. So you took that out of the mix by extending him away. And I think that's the way to do it obviously for a recent NHL Jack Adams Award winner as Coach of the Year a couple of seasons back. One of the very most highly thought of young coaches in the NHL for sure. And now you've got him locked up. And that too, to me, is a drawing point, is a point where the players will sit there and talk and they have their conversations. And I'm sure that they say they enjoy playing for Spencer, and please come and join our squad and make it better, Jordan Kyrou. Go for it.
So I'm going to bring you into the conversation that I just had with callers about, our sports town. And it's really off of the selection of AJ Dybantsa, the buzz that the Wizards have right now. There was a phenomenal crowd last night at the Anthem. I think people like me who do this 3 hours, 4 hours a day, every day can sort of sense and feel, where the interest level is and how it rises and falls on the four teams in town. I mean, you've been here long enough. I mean, for those that don't know, Joe's, a Long Island, New York guy and very much a New England college lacrosse player from great affluence on the North Shore of Long Island. Of course, I'm making that up. I don't even know where you're from on Long Island. I'm going to guess somewhere like Great Neck.
I'm Suffolk County, so
so you're out there.
I was born in New York City, raised in Suffolk County, Brentwood, Comac, Dix Hills area.
Yeah.
So with regard to the Hamptons and where the U.S. Open was, Shinnecock Hills, probably another further hour east from me.
At least. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good 2.5 hour ride if you're going out the LIE from the city to get to where they were playing golf last weekend. But, you've been here now so long and this town. You're really, I mean, for somebody that's lived here as long as you've lived here, you're actually considered a Washingtonian. I think that in my lifetime, I have a hard time believing that the football team won't be the number one, mass consumed product in town. But I've always felt, Joe, that the Wizards are the sleeping giant, that they're the ones that if they ever became a legitimate contender, and I'm not talking about a playoff team that wins a series like the John Wall, Bradley Beal teams did. I'm talking about a legitimate into late May, June NBA contender, that it would rise to the clear-cut number 2 in this town. You've been here long enough. You obviously have called Caps games forever, and you know how rabid that fan base is. But what do you think about what I've described as far as what the Wizards' opportunity is if they get this right?
I'm in lockstep with you. I just, for obvious reasons, as a Monumental Sports Network employee, we're rooting for the Wizards collectively to do incredibly well and reach the same heights that the Caps and Nats did. I think that was in consecutive years, 18 and 19.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I can tell, Kevin, that I listen to sports radio all the time. I value the insight and the understanding of the climate that you guys have. I listen all the time, and I get the sense in the last month or so that once the lottery went the Wizards' way, so many local sports talk radio hosts have become that much more excited about that young core that the Wizards are possessing. And I know I'm told there's a plan to develop and build into a year-long, year-after-year contender. And I know that it's taken Wizards fans down to a place where you're barely winning 20 games a year. I know that's hard, but you root for an AJ Dybantsa to come to town, for free agents to be signed, for other players who are on your roster to be inked, for all of a sudden now everybody's like, wow, that Wizards roster is coming together nicely. And if it clicks the right way, and all of these ifs, I know they're ifs, but there's a potential there. And Kevin, I used to do a lot of college basketball in the area, and I miss doing it because I love calling the sport. But I firmly understand what you're saying, and I've seen how rabid Maryland basketball, Georgetown basketball, the college area hoops can be. I haven't seen it at the NBA level all that much, aside from the years that you pointed out where there were playoff squad teams. But what happens? You're asking me what happens if they become a legit Eastern Conference kind of contender? Then yes, they do have the city listening, watching, and waiting and hanging on every word and every play they make. Absolutely they do. And yes, they would have the opportunity, I think, strength in numbers to be second behind the Commanders. Yes, I wouldn't think that would be, if you had that kind of talent come to town and that NBA attraction was as strong as it could be, well, I think it'd be amazing in this city.
Yeah, I would love it. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the Bullets were really good, playing at the Capitol Center, but playing in a championship series back-to-back years against the same opponent, the Seattle Supersonics. They won in 78. They lost in 79. You know, the Bullets in the 70s, Joe, went to more NBA finals than any other team in the league, if you count their finals trip in the early 70s as the Baltimore Bullets. But they went to the finals 4 times in a decade and haven't sniffed that now in 48 years. I mean, that's a long time. That's multiple generations of lost opportunity. But still, we're a basketball town in many ways at the core. At the roots of this town, and I think it would be a massive deal for sure.
The hockey equivalent that I would give would be as important as hockey is in Toronto. I mean, it is enormous in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. They've not won a Stanley Cup since 1967. Those hockey fans,
they've been close and they've had good teams in recent years.
Beyond belief. Yeah. No,
that would be
they've definitely. They've hinted at being that good, but they've never been able to get it over the hump.
You know, that's actually a good topic. You just gave me an idea, because with the Knicks, you know, winning their first title. By the way, how pumped were you for that? Were you a Knicks fan growing up?
I was. I have family members who love the New York Knicks, and it was an amazing celebration for that city. I'm so far removed from it, and like you said, with the amount of time I've spent here, I've become a Washingtonian, but there's definitely part of me that was extremely happy for family members who've hung on the actions of the Knicks forever and have always sat there and said, when's the next Willis Reed opportunity? Well, they got it.
Yeah. But the idea is, like, off the Knicks winning their first title in 53 years, you know, the short list of the longest droughts where the reception to a title would be what it was in New York. And I think you may have nailed it. I think the Maple Leafs
Toronto for me.
In Toronto would be up there. And look, the Redskins, the Commander, our football team winning the whole thing after 35 years would be a big deal as well. You know, for sure.
Montreal would fall in that boat, but they've
how long has it been for them?
In 1993, Kevin. Nobody in Canada has won it since 1993.
That's not 67, though, which is Toronto.
It's not 67. And Toronto is rabid. Montreal is religion. Toronto is rabid. And 1967 is a far longer cry than 93, for sure.
No, I remember not too long ago, the Raptors and the Maple Leafs were both playing Game 7s on the same night. And I can't remember who it was that I had on the show, but I had somebody on the show from there who just said, oh, it's not even close. The Maple Leafs game is the most important game in town. Not even close. And the Raptors are popular in Toronto.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But in that city, it's not even close. And I just, which makes me think to generations, sports fans of our age and sports fans who are younger than us, far younger than us. You're saying, I can't remember a Bullets Wizards team that was that kind of competitive. And there are young people who've never seen it even close. So to have the kind of excitement that's building, and I think it is building here, you would hope that there's whatever is necessary to add the next piece or one more piece or whatever it is. And as the young players make their continued climb to what they were, to what management was hoping for, that, yeah, you can get into that type of situation. If I understand it, in the NBA, things can happen pretty swiftly. This kind of a acquisition in the draft.
Oklahoma City, Detroit, they're examples of these teams coming out of these kind of, reconstruction or deconstruction, reconstruction, or however Ted describes it. But, basically tanking for a few years and coming out on the other side being really good. There's no guarantee. You got to have.
I know the fans have to be patient. You got to be patient, but I think you can see it now. What's that old expression? The light at the end of the tunnel. You can see it now.
There's a glimmer there, as Marty Schottenheimer once said. There's a gleam. There's something going on there. But the bottom line in that sport, Joe, it's so hard to win the whole thing without an elite level player. And do they have that? Maybe they got it last night. Time will tell. Thanks for doing this as always. Love talking to you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Be well.
Joe Beninati, everybody. Adam Schefter said something about Brandon Ayuk that I think is interesting, and you should hear what he said. I'll have that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Jesse Doherty, who covers the Nats, college sports, and a lot of other things for the new news outlet in town, Notice, is going to join us in about 10 minutes because he wrote a story last week about A.J. Dybantsa's father, an interesting figure for sure. That's coming up in 10 minutes. So, Adam Schefter, what's this from, his podcast?
I believe it's from his podcast. It could be from Pat McAfee show, but it's been making the rounds this morning, and Pat McAfee show's only been running for 30 minutes. So I'm pretty sure it's from the Schefter podcast this morning.
This was Schefter weighing in on Brandon Ayuk's recent social media videos.
I think every time he opens his mouth, he damages his standing with other teams, and he scares other teams from bringing him into their organization. And I just think he doesn't realize that. He thinks he's helping the situation. I don't believe that to be the case. And speaking to teams, everybody's saying, what's wrong with this guy right now? Like, it's unsettling to watch him. It's scary to see how he's handling himself. And by the way, he's still a member of the 49ers organization, still, the team that paid him, and he's saying go Commanders, which clearly is the team that he would like to go play for, being that he played with Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. So we'd like to go rejoin Jaden Daniels in Washington. I haven't asked Washington. I'll have to give them a call. Their thoughts on signing Brandon Ayuk, bring him in. Maybe for all we know, they're planning on doing that and it'll get done. But I know, having spoken to them leading up to the draft, they had some questions at that point in time. And I would imagine they still exist. What I would think happens here is most of the NFL is shut down. They're not in the building. This is the one time that everybody can get away. And I would imagine that when the 49ers get back and reconvene for training camp, right around there, I would think that they wind up releasing Brandon Ayuk.
All right, so two things. Number one, he's predicting that they will release Ayuk at the beginning of training camp. But number two is this, and I've suggested that if Washington wanted to just make this go away in terms of them being the destination once he gets released, they could just leak it to Schefter. They could leak it to Rappaport or somebody else. And Schefter says, I haven't asked Washington their thoughts on signing Brandon Ayuk. Maybe for all we know, they're planning on doing it. But I know having spoken to them leading up to the draft, they had some questions at that point in time, and I would imagine they still exist. I don't have any clue. The only thing I will say is what I have said for months now. I think it's going to happen. I think Brandon Ayuk's going to be in Washington shortly after he's released by the 49ers. Now, I do think the timing of the release could impact all of this. And I do think, as Adam said, that there is an unsettling nature to his recent communication. I mean, he does not look like a guy that is either all there or a guy that is getting very good advice or a guy who's just not listening to the good advice he's getting. These are not good looks for him. This is not necessarily reminding, the world of what a horrible contract the 49ers offered him and signed him to, does not make himself look better in his attempt to tear down the 49ers. All of it, just in terms of style and substance, makes him look like he may be a bit off right now. So I agree with Adam on that. I think most reasonable thinking people do. If you think it's some grand plan and some grand strategy to force the 49ers' hand sooner rather than later, it's not the way to go about it. The way to go about it would have been for him to show up at OTAs. The way he's been doing it is more cowardly. But I do think that, the idea that Adam's now one of a few people that have suggested the 49ers will pull the trigger and release him at the beginning of training camp next month, end of next month, is interesting, certainly coming from him. And just the idea that Washington may have had some questions about Ayuk, the last time he checked in with them. I am going to stick with my prediction. I think that when he gets released, there's going to be a sit down. There's going to be a bit of a come to Jesus. There's going to be a medical evaluation. There's going to be a psychological evaluation. And at the end of the day, he will present himself in a way that convinces Adam Peters and company to just, why not give him a shot on a total prove it deal. I mean, I'm talking about a deal that they can literally, tear up a day after he arrives if they want to, and it doesn't cost them a thing. Up next, Jesse Doherty will jump on with me. He wrote a story about A.J. Dybantsa's father that was very interesting. This is someone that I think we're all going to get to know to a certain degree, and not in a bad way. That's next. We just had this guy on last week. I like having Jesse Doherty on. He was always a great guest covering the Nats for the Post. Came on last week in his new role with Notice, which is an acronym for News of the United States. It's kind of, maybe I should let Jesse explain it, but it's an attempt to sort of replace what the Post doesn't provide anymore, including an actual sports section, which not only is Jesse a part of, but I read from Dave Sheinen's column last hour as well on AJ Dybantsa. Why don't you describe, when you tell people where you are now, how do you describe it?
Can I just first say, how good is Dave Sheehan?
I've always loved Dave. Always loved Dave.
Hang up and call him. I mean, really, this is a mistake on your part.
Yeah, no, he's great.
Yeah,
and he's a good guest, too. Always a good radio guest. Yeah,
I'm sure. Describing my new place. Yeah, I mean, so Notice has been around for a few years but before the Post laid off more than 400 people, it was really focused and frankly, crushing it on Capitol Hill coverage. So, Congress, the White House, anything politics. And And then once the Post did what it did, including to me and most of my colleagues in sports, Notice saw an opportunity to both cover DC sports, sports in general. My beat's kind of an amalgamation of the Nationals, sports and politics, college sports and Congress, a lot of different things, and then also the DC area, through a news section. So I'll just brag real quick. I mean, Michael Bryce Sadler and Martin Ostermuller are two of the best reporters on DC politics. If you care about the recent mayor race, or if you care about what goes on in your city or your neighborhood in DC, like there's no better people writing about it. There's also others on the staff as well. A young writer named Zara Norman who does a great job. So yeah, I mean, I could go on all day, mostly because I'm so excited that this place exists. But from a sports perspective, we're just getting started in these last few weeks, and I think it's going to be awesome.
All right. Well, I reached out to you a week after having you on because somebody sent me the column that you wrote on A.J. Dybantsa's father. And this is not something that I was actually aware of up until a few days ago when you wrote this column. But I'll just read from the first few sentences from Jesse's column on A.J. Dybantsa and his father. He writes, "What you're about to read is not particularly normal." Okay, it's actually not normal at all. You see, NBA players almost always have agents. Players about to enter the NBA almost always have agents too. A.J. Dybantsa, however, is not your typical NBA-bound player because, among other reasons, Ace Dybantsa is not your typical basketball dad. So last night learned a little bit more about the father. Obviously, they announced A.J. Dybantsa with his father's full first name, which is A.J.'s first full name. But go ahead. Tell us why Ace Dybantsa, A.J. Dybantsa's father, is not your typical basketball dad.
Yeah, so what they've done is that they don't have a traditional agent, which is fairly provocative. And a major reason for that, and this doesn't just deal with the NBA, it also has dealt with NIL in college, NIL in high school, which, AJ made millions of dollars before he even got to BYU's campus, both through endorsements and NIL deals with his various teams. They've decided not to go with the traditional agent because Ace has believed that through his own research and through support from the circle he has put around him and AJ, that he can do a lot of what those agents do, and then the family can keep a 4% cut that an agent would take from a first NBA contract, or a 20% cut that an agent might take from an NIL deal in college. Now, they're not alone. They work with a man named Leonard Armato, who was Shaq's agent in the 90s. He's sort of framed as a family advisor. They have a marketing team now that's based in Paris. They have people that have done social media. So it's not just Ace and AJ taking on the world, on their own, but they're not with, Rich Paul at Clutch Sports. So they're not with any of these big name NBA agents that typically we see the first, second, or third pick sign with. It's an extremely interesting situation where Ace's reasoning, at least specifically to the draft, is the max deal for a rookie from picks 1 through 30 is prescribed, is already decided by
slotted.
Scale. It's slotted, yeah. And there's obviously, people who say, well, what about endorsements, or what about his second contract? And I think it'll be fascinating to see how this approach evolves. But to this point, they have very much embodied keeping it in the family as much as possible.
So what's his dad's background? Why is he qualified to do this? By the way, with respect to rookie contracts, I bet if a lot of people looked into it, because it is slotted, and by the way, both the NFL and the NBA, really all you need is a lawyer to read through the contract and make sure that it's, the right kind of contract. In terms of negotiating a deal, there's really not much negotiating. But beyond that, give me the father's background, profession, career.
Yeah, well, it's not anything that really deals with basketball or contracts. He was a campus cop at Boston University. He's worked in retail before that. He's worked a lot of odd jobs. He's from the Congo. He lived in France. I mean, he describes himself as someone who's just constantly talking to people and absorbing information. Coaches and people I've talked to around them have said, he's always has his ears up. He's writing down everything he hears from any agent that even they meet with. I mean, over the years, they've been courted by more than 20, 30 people who've wanted to represent his son. And I think Ace is a very savvy business person and a very savvy parent in this case, where he's grabbing something from all those meetings. And he's not necessarily calling back and saying, great, you're hired, but he's I think he's always taking tidbits and forming his approach. Now, again, they have an advisor who's very experienced. They have marketing people to help negotiate Nike and Red Bull and Fanatics and whatever it may be. But he's the lead. And, for me as a reporter, it was fascinating because I both wrote about him last week, but also I profiled him at the Washington Post. And, when I called him to ask to talk to AJ, asked to talk to him, athletes these days, and this is going to make me sound kind of old and cranky, but like you try to write about a college athlete and you get put on an email chain with 17 people.
Right.
And, it's their marketing team and their agent and their agent's assistant and the assistant for the assistant. And it's like 15 emails later, you're like, you've landed on the fact that you now get a 5-minute Zoom call with an 18-year-old kid. Like that's really how access is in a lot of cases.
Right.
In this case, it was Ace saying, yeah, fly to Provo, come see us. Like that was it. That was the whole, and he decides what AJ has done, what podcasts, what interviews, what cover story, what magazine. And so he's really, he's been the one driving the bus. I mean, he really, really has.
Has his involvement as a parent/agent, and by the way, it's a good point. Like, this isn't going to be the first deal that he's helped negotiate on behalf of his son, because his son made a bunch of money at BYU last year and probably made a bunch of money in Brockton, in Massachusetts, because there's NIL for high school players as well. But has his involvement as, let's just call it parent/agent or agent/parent, has it manifested itself into anything more with the coaches, with the teams, with front offices? Like, is there a concern there?
Yeah, I think so. One of the big things I've heard over and over is that he's not like a traditional basketball parent in the sense that he's like asking AJ to be put in more pick and roll sets, or, frankly, like Ace loves to tell the story, and you'll start to see in the media a lot of stories come up because he has sort of a set amount of stories he tells, and you'll see the story of, him telling Kevin Young at BYU, like, if AJ, acts up, like just bench his ass. Like, and I think like that's his, a lot of the basketball parents we think of in this regard are doing the opposite, right? Or are angry that their kid's not playing, or saying treat him this way or that way. Ace has at least anecdotally gone the opposite route and said, you're the basketball coach, that's your deal. Now, on the flip side, he will count the number of times the team account has posted his son on Twitter or Instagram, right? And might, by whatever means he has or whatever contacts, at least in the past, might say, hey, we need him on there more. Or we said at the beginning he was going to be a main feature on the Instagram, account. And I don't see that. Like, his business brain is where he meddles. He does not meddle in basketball. So I think in a lot of cases, like, if I could extrapolate that out, it might be where the coaches are like, we love him, he's fine, he's hands off. But maybe like the team marketing people are like, wow, he's really involved. They're like, he's really on us. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case in the NBA, but coaches have not spoken negatively to me on or off the record about his involvement, because he largely has just, put his hands up and said, basketball is for the basketball coaches, especially somewhere like BYU, where Kevin Young had a ton of NBA experience and coached Kevin Durant. Like, they really were trustworthy of that staff. So that's where I think his sort of involvement is maybe a bit different than the classic sports parent we're used to.
What was your impression of AJ Dybantsa?
Yeah, I mean, he was shy with me. I've seen him be a little bit less shy in podcast interviews. I think, like, when I was around them for 3 days, it was in their house in Provo. It was fairly intimate access. I was at dinner with the family. When you're 18, and you've done TV interviews, you've done podcast interviews, I think that's one thing, and those are finite and they end in 5 minutes or half an hour. And having a photographer and a writer who are relative strangers, visit you for 3 days and basically be a fly on the wall for your life is maybe a bit different. So, don't take that personally, but I don't know if I got like a super relaxed side of him to make like a full assessment personality wise. I think what I've seen is that he does come out of his shell when he's more comfortable with people. I didn't get to that point. I didn't spend 2 weeks there. I think I would have. Right. I could tell him warming up. I mean, I got him to laugh a little bit and smile, but he just like, he's a kid and like he like loves playing basketball. Like, everything was just basketball. And when he's at his house and I'm hanging out in the kitchen with his mom and dad, like, he wants to take a nap or scroll his phone. Like, he doesn't necessarily want to sit with a reporter and keep talking. Sure. He's like, I've been up all morning working out. I'm going to go scroll TikTok. It's like, so, I mean, he was just kind of a teenager, honestly. And I think like the NBA is obviously very used to bringing those kinds of personalities and and teenagers into the fold and teaching them the ropes, how to be a pro. So like, I don't think he's that much different. Like I didn't get like, this like franchise player feel when I visited them. I thought this was an 18-year-old who's acting like an 18-year-old, and it was raw. And I liked that view too.
All right, as long as I have you on, that was a painful loss last night for the Nationals. I mean, they were on the verge of taking the first two in this 4-game set against a legit opponent who's, by the way, been on fire offensively coming into this series. Philadelphia has. I mean, Brad Lord's had some decent outings, but last night was a disaster.
Yeah. He's been, the team's most reliable reliever, frankly. And if you run the numbers on even just their win and loss record, when he starts, it's pretty remarkable. Or when he pitches, rather, it's pretty remarkable. Honestly, like this is maybe a preview for the column I'm working on right now. I'm going to get back to hacking away at when we get off here. But like, I think there is an element of like, this is what caring feels like again. Like it's one thing to get your brains beat in 2022 or 2023 when you're about to lose, you're supposed to lose every game and you're feeling really apathetic. But on the flip side of that, like, I think it's even harder to lose like this when you really think a team can win and their expectations. And I sensed on social media, I've been texting fans all morning to kind of frame my column. Like, how are you feeling? And a lot of them are sort of like, almost like oddly grateful, and refreshed that like the game can make them feel that way. Cause it's been a few years. And I think that's like my main takeaway is like, that was brutal, but like brutal is almost like refreshing. And I guess I'm writing some column paragraphs here on the air with you. So thanks for letting me do that.
No worries. I'll ask you one last question and let you run, but because college sports is sort of an emphasis, and I've not talked about Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback at Indiana and then at Cincinnati this past year, applying for the supplemental draft and being denied yesterday, which I actually, when he went for the supplemental draft, for whatever reason, I didn't even consider the possibility that the NFL wouldn't have a supplemental draft. But they've decided not to. They're steering clear of this particular, transgression. So what are your thoughts on how it feels like lots of lawyers for the next few weeks?
Yeah. And I think like, one thing I've been thinking a ton about in this saga is what I think is sort of false equivalencies to a degree. Like I think a lot of people are going to rightfully point out that the NFL partners with gambling companies for advertisements, right? But then also is going to turn around now and effectively make it so this player, because he didn't show the right amount of contrition, can't play this fall or can't have a supplementary draft that would get him into the league. And like, I understand what you're saying. When people point that out, but to me, like there are red lines in sports, and we can debate what they are, right? Like I think there's really
that's one,
right, and it's one, it's definitely
that's
one.
100. You can't. If not, then it's professional wrestling, and that's actually the risk. I mean, and look, they've suspended players. Calvin Ridley was suspended a few years ago, and there's another player or two. So they're not allowing their players to cross that line, despite taking all that money from FanDuel and DraftKings and everybody else.
Yeah, and it's also like you do what you want to do in your life. There are consequences. And one of those consequences is that private businesses may just decide they don't want to employ you. And it doesn't mean you can't like walk down the street and get a coffee in your neighborhood. It doesn't mean that, you can't continue on and maybe even do something else with your life or career. Frankly, like go to school still in college. Like that's never been thrown out as an option for Brendan Sorsby, that he could be helped by just like getting a degree. Right. But there also is like consequences that like maybe, people just sort of, whether they're colluding behind the scenes or not, might just say, you know what, I don't want that guy on my team. Or I don't want the PR headache, or I don't feel comfortable with people asking in the social media mentions of every game result whether he was gambling on the outcome. And it might be really unfair for a young man who had a problem and has clearly sought help for it, but that is a reality of consequences for your actions. And I'm very curious to see how long teams are willing to draw that red line if they believe he's talented enough. What we're really seeing, frankly, is how good the teams think Brendan Sorsby is. Because we know if they thought he was the next Patrick Mahomes, that he'd be on it. There'd be a supplemental draft, right? or there would be, teams would be clamoring to get him. I think we're going to find out the limit of the view of him through this, because I think every red line can be broken for the right person, and it might not be him.
Yeah, free to do what you want, free to say what you want, but in a private business, not free of the consequences of such actions. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
For sure.
But thanks for jumping on. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
And really good
Thank
story on AJ Dybantsa's father.
Appreciate it. Yep, anytime.
Jesse Doherty, everybody, at Doherty_Jesse. All right, that'll do it for today. Chris is up next.